Rabbi Berzon coming into replace him at 10:15.
Oh, okay. Oh, so there's still Shiva. Okay. So Shavua Tov and Boker Tov. So this is the second time I'm going to repeat a psalm. So I hope nobody remembers. No, we're going to say some new things anyways. But I just wanted to do a psalm for Yerushalayim, because next Sunday we're not meeting because the center won't be open at 9:00 next week. I don't think they're opening till like 10:30. I think is what I saw the notice. Do you remember what that time they said? I thought I said 10. Oh, it doesn't make. I thought I saw 10:30 because of Yom Yerushalayim. So I hope people will go like last year to the Tayelet, in Talpiot, and they have the they have the davening there. It's sponsored by the OU together with the city, and they're having Shlomo Katz this year. Last year they had somebody else. I don't remember who it is, but Shlomo Katz is wonderful, and I know a lot of people went to hear him on. I didn't go this year, but we went to an alternative venue. But he had a tremendous crowd for Yom Ha'atzmaut at night. Here they're doing it in the morning, and it's just very inspiring to daven and sing Hallel overlooking the old city. And you get this great vantage point. Let's hope for nice weather next Sunday morning. So that's 8:00 in the morning, but they won't be done till 10. No, you don't have to come on time. Oh. You can go to earlier minyan and just come for Hallel. But it's really, really nice. And it's Kedai. It's really Kedai. I'm going to make an editorial comment now, and I'm going to make another separate comment at the end. I have, what word am I looking for? I don't want to say a problem. That's too strong a word. I have an issue with Yom Yerushalayim. It hurts me so much how few people make a big deal out of Yom Yerushalayim anymore. And it's of course here, what bothers me the most, but it was in the States also. I don't know if you remember, Gary, I always made sure I did something in the show. The city never did anything when we were in Connecticut together. I always made sure I did a program for Yom Yerushalayim. Sometimes it was bigger, sometimes it was smaller, but even on the 50th anniversary, a few years ago, the city, the Jews in Stanford, which is, we're talking about a city with, maybe 8,000-9,000 Jews, wasn't going to do anything. And a lot of places weren't doing anything. And here in Eretz Yisrael, a lot of people just totally ignore the day. And it's such a shame. It's like the day only belongs to the Dati Le'umi. The Charedim aren't interested, for whatever reasons that are ridiculous, but they're not interested. They love being able to go to the Kotel, but they're not willing to give thanks for the miracle that got us the Kotel. So the Charedim aren't interested, and the Chilonim aren't interested. Depending upon the group, you have to be careful, because whenever you lump people together, you are doing an injustice to some of them. But a lot of the Chilonim are embarrassed by having won the 6-Day War because they're so concerned about the issues of peace. I'm not saying that their concerns aren't real. We do want to find the modus vivendi with our Arab neighbors, and a lot of the problems were exacerbated by the war. But the PLO started before the 6-Day War. They wanted to get rid of us before this. So it's like the problems weren't the result. It was just an issue in the war itself. But anyways, it was a tremendous event. And those of us who were alive when it happened were just blown away by the events. So I think it's important that we do things to mark the day. And as preparation, let's take a look at one of the most famous Tehillim about Yerushalayim. There are about 5 Tehillim that really talk about Yerushalayim specifically. Gets mentioned in dozens, But there's 5 or so that really talk about Yerushalayim. And I was thinking, since I did this one last year, maybe I'll do another one this year. But this is the one that really speaks to me. And I just find it difficult to not talk about this as we prepare for Yom Yerushalayim. So the poem begins, Shir HaMa'alot LeDavid. So this is one of the 15 songs of ascent. And I don't want to go into this. We talked about this when we did the first one, which is 120. This is 122. And the reason there are 15, that's the shortest Shem of Hashem, that we believe that the temple had 15 steps from the outer courtyard where people could stay when you went into the Ezrat Leviyah, where you brought the korbanot. Okay, so there are a lot of reasons for the number 15. I'm going to bring another one up in a couple of minutes as well. So this is part of that series. But this one is very special because it talks about more than any other, although Psalm 48 too talks about it a little bit. This talks about the experience. It's like we're living with the people who are going to Yerushalayim. And so the end of the first pasuk gets into controversy. Okay, so before I talk about who wrote the poem, even though it says LeDavid, we'll talk about that in a second. Samachti ba'omrim li Beit Hashem nelech. I was happy when it was said to me, when the other guys said to me, hi, Boker Tov, when the other guy said to me, let's go to Yerushalayim, just the thought of going to Yerushalayim resulted in a reaction of joy in me. Let's go to the house of Hashem. So what is this talking about? Now, the most popular opinion about this is that it's describing the experience of people that went to Yerushalayim either for the Olei Regel, that's Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, the people that went for the 3 pilgrimage festivals, and there are within the Edot Mizrach, the Sephardi communities that recite this. We don't do this. We Ashkenazim don't do this, but Sephardim, after Mincha, after the Chazan repeats Shmon Esrei, they have a Kaddish Aleim, and then they say a Psalm. Now, it's different Psalms based on different times of the year, whatever. But usually it's the 23rd Psalm is the most common one, but whatever. But on Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, all of those days, which comes out to 16 days, they say this at Mincha. They say this poem because we're supposed to feel as if we're going to Yerushalayim for the pilgrimage, for the Aliyat Regel. Other people say that it's talking not dafka about the Regel, it's talking instead about bringing the Bikurim. And again, there's another poem, both 48 and 84, talk about going to Yerushalayim for bringing Bikurim. So in other words, when they started seeing their produce come in, sometime either at or after Shavuot, they said, wow, let's go to Yerushalayim and bring our Bikurim. And there's even a description of it in the Gemara in the Yerushalmi, in Bikurim. And so it says, it describes it like this. Those who live near brought fresh figs and grapes. Now the question is, what does it mean to live near Yerushalayim? And generally speaking, near Yerushalayim meant within Modi'in. And of course, Modi'in is on our minds these days because of the fires there. And so we have their safety and their, and their property values in mind, because it was the forest of Beit Shemen that was really in danger, and Mavo Modi'in was basically wiped out by the fire. But so those who lived near was within Modi'in. So I'm going to say about 30 kilometers in each direction was considered near. Be'erach, okay? So in other words, it included the Gush, but didn't include Hebron. Hebron's just, like 36 or 38 kilometers. So that's the circle around Yerushalayim that's considered near. So if you live near, you brought fresh figs and grapes. But those from a distance brought dried figs and raisins. Okay? An ox with horns bedecked with gold and with an olive crown on its head led the way. Now, an ox was pulling a wagon with a lot of the stuff, and they decorated the ox. The horns had stuff on it, the head. Okay, so it must have been a wonderful procession. The flute was played before them until they were near to Yerushalayim. So the question is, when did they start the singing and the dancing? And so the theory is the singing and the dancing started at Motzah. Now, it used to be very easy to describe where Motzah is. Because if you remember the old Route 1, you'd say when you went all the way down to the bottom and then started up again toward Yerushalayim, that was Motzah. But now the road's flatter. Baruch Hashem, it's a much better road now. But that's what Motzah is, that all the way down at the bottom. So apparently the Ole Rego and the people bringing Bikurim would stop there. Number one, there was water. There was a stream going by, and they would gather there. And then from that point, that's when this procession that's being described would begin at Motzah and going up that, and they were schlepping up that hill together. I remember one of my first times, in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, I had already lived here, but I'd just gotten here. I was on a bus, and they had all of these Christians on the bus. And when they got to Motzah, they started singing songs in English about going up to Yerushalayim. I said, gee, this is interesting. We're on a naked bus from I was taking it from River Seret, but they got on some earlier place. And like, okay. So anyways, that was the spot. From Motzah's where apparently they started the singing, the dancing. But that's what the pasuk is describing. And when they arrived close to Yerushalayim, they sent messages in advance. This is preparation for the next pasuk, okay? And ornamentally arrayed their bikurim. The governors and chiefs and treasurers of the temple went out to meet them. According to the rank of the entrance, they would go forth. All the skilled artists in Jerusalem would stand up before them and greet them. So in other words, what's going on in these psukim, according to the Gemara, happened at least in Bayit Sheni. At least in Bayit Sheni. About Bayit Rishon, we don't know so much, but these were describing, and you'll hear why I'm telling this. Brethren, men of such and such a place, people from Modi'in, Ledugma, okay? We are delighted to welcome you. The flute was playing before them. They reached the Temple Mount, and when they reached the Temple Mount, even King Agrippas, street Agrippas is named after King Agrippas. That was the grandson of Herod. And he was at the beginning of the Common Era, the king, and he was a very pious man. He felt very guilty about being king. The stories he cried when they used to read about the king, because his b'makor, he shouldn't have been a king. Because his grandfather was a convert, his great-grandfather converted, Antipater. So he was like embarrassed. And then the Jews told him how much they loved him. This apparently happened 10, 12 of the Common Era. Just 2010 years ago, be'erech. At the approach to the courtyard, the Levium would sing the song, I will extol you, O Lord, for you have raised me up and have not suffered my enemies to rejoice over me. On the road, they would say, I was glad when they said to me, we are going to the house of the Lord. In Jerusalem, they said, our feet were standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. So this is what they said. So they started to say the first part apparently either went before they left home, and then when they got to the gates, then we come to Pasuk 2, Omdot hayu ragleinu b'shareach Yerushalayim. Our feet were standing at your gates. So they came to the threshold of the gate. I'm assuming in the second temple we're talking about Shar Yafo. I'm assuming it's Shar Yafo, in those days. In the first temple, there wasn't a Shar Yafo. As we'll take a look at the picture later. I'll try to describe where it is. But when later, they would say that's where the big ceremony took place. because that was the road that came from the coastal plain to Yerushalayim. So we say that's what we did with this poem. However, was it really written by King David? There wasn't the Beit HaMikdash yet. As he brought the Aron and he bought the land and built the foundations. If you look at the picture at the top, it didn't reproduce that well. It looked better in the original. The machine isn't that good. But if you look at the top of the picture, you see the wall narrows way at the top where it's almost black. That is Harabayit, way at the top. Oh, you don't have one? Does they?
I'll go out.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So way at the top there, that is Har Habayit. Okay. And so they would come into the city mostly in those days on the right-hand side of the picture. About 2/3 of the way up is the Shar that's called Shar Hamayim, and that's by the Gihon Springs. That was the main entrance into the city in the days of King David and King Solomon. So did King David write this? Some people say yes, because King David was anticipating. He was building and getting ready. We call it Sukkot David. So perhaps it really was written by David. Some people say no, it was written for King David during the time of the first Beit HaMikdash. And there's a group of people that claim that it was written only when the Jews came back to Eretz Yisrael, and in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. And that's when this poem was written, and it was on behalf of David. In other words, when you read the first line, Shir HaMalot li David, not by David, but on behalf of David, because we give him the credit for having the Beit HaMikdash. And there's an interesting Sfat Emet that says when it comes to Yerushalayim, chronology is not as important as the rest of the world. They talk about Rome as the eternal city, but first that's not true. The eternal city is Yerushalayim. There's almost no before and after. That these lines, according to the Sfat Emet, writing in the end of the 19th century, writing in the 1880s, when he wrote this particular Torah, was talking about saying we also are saying this poem, anticipating Bayit Shlishi. So, and of course for us, it's extremely important as well. And he said, we're like King David. We don't yet have the temple, but we can almost feel the preparations for it returning. Now, he wrote this, like I said, in the 1880s. How much more so we feel this way today? I mean, there we are, by the Kotel, and some people go on Rabbi, and it's like, we can, almost taste it, And that's what these lines are talking about, the anticipation of going up. Okay? So Omdut Hayo Reglainu B'Sharat B'Yerushalayim, there's an interesting Hasidic vort about Omdot Hayo Reglainu, that you can feel it all the way down to the heels of your feet. It starts in your brain, then it goes to your heart, and the emotions and the sense joy tingles all the way down to your toes, which is which is nice, a nice way of saying it. Yerushalayim habenuya, Jerusalem which is built up, ka'ir shehubra la yachdav, like a city which is connected to itself, gathered unto itself. Now, what does that mean? And the pshat is, and that's why I put the picture on the town, on a picture of the Yerushalayim looked in Bayit Rishon at the bottom, because from a distance, it looked like the entire city was connected. It looked like there were almost no empty spaces. We know there were streets. There weren't parks, but there were streets. But from the distance, looking at it, the city looked like it was just all one gush, all one block. And so that's apparently what one interpretation is. Another interpretation is that it was two cities that was joined together, that the Temple Mount was called Sion originally, and then there's Yerushalayim and Sion, and they built the wall under Shlomo Melech to make it Chubra Lo Yatav, one city. I'll talk about this a little bit at the end, but of course for us in 1967, it meant the reunited Yerushalayim. Of course, the mystics, the agenda of the mystics is the most famous, and for many, many years was the most popular approach. I think today, people that think about this poem think about 67, okay? And the city becoming one again. But the mystics say, of course, what's important about Yerushalayim is there are two of them. The word Yerushalayim is like Raglayim and Yadayim, right? It means that there are two. As a matter of fact, if you look at the word, it's not spelled with that yud. It's spelled Yerushalayim. There's one of them. So that's the way it's written, but we pronounce it Yerushalayim. And the creed, the way it's talking about, there are two of them. What are the two Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim Shomata, Yerushalayim Shomala. There's the Jerusalem, the physical Jerusalem here, but on the other side, in heaven, is the Yerushalayim Shomala. And Yerushalayim is the connector, the interface between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. In other words, when you go to Olam Haba, it's like, when you get to the other side, the first place you're at is Yerushalayim. As the last place you leave here is Yerushalayim. First place you go there is Yerushalayim. The other one, the mirror one, right? And so that's why we say the tefillot, go from Yerushalayim to heaven. And of course, that's why the Meforshim say that when Yaakov Avinu had the dream, the ladder, he was in Beit El, but the ladder was on a slope. And so he could see that the place where the ladder entered Shemayim, right, the heavenly realm, was directly over Har Rabbi. That he could see that because Beit El is higher, so you can look down. Just like, Harei Chevron are higher, you could look down and you could see, that's where the ladder goes into heaven. So that's the Ir Shechubra Lo Yachdav. But we'll return to that idea. One more idea before we go on is this verse Gimel is connected to verse Chet. It's the city that brings the Jews together. Some of us may find that a little ironic because of all the fights that take place about Jerusalem amongst the Jews today. But historically, this was people from all over the world. Jews would come from all over the world to make Aliyat Regel to Yerushalayim. And so when they're making that, they feel like they are brethren, which is what Pasuk Chet's going to talk about. We'll get to that in a few minutes, that it unites us. I think historically it's true. I mean, it's like so many years you just say, Lashon Haba Yerushalayim. I don't care what your background is. That just brings, a warm feeling to everybody, whether you're sitting, in New York or Perth or Johannesburg. It doesn't make a difference. Someone says Lashon Haba Yerushalayim. It's like that's a joint memory for all of us. Whether it's, from the end of Yom Kippur or from the end of a Seder. It's like, it's a warm glow that all of us share. You can say Lashon Haba Yerushalayim to any Jewish group, anywhere. And it just means the same thing. And it just has that same resonance. So it is a city that unites us. It's a city that unites us. Forgetting about politics here in Yerushalayim these days and the fights, and the women of the wall out there, and then the Haredim outnumber them. But I mean, okay, forgetting about the fights. But historically, this has been true. You can say the line, L'Shem Yerushalayim, and everybody gets a smile on their face. Everybody gets a warm glow. It doesn't make a difference where they are or when. It traverses time and space. And that's a very powerful thing. Okay. Dalet and Hay is a little bit, I don't want to call it technical because the whole poem is extremely emotional, but it's a description of the importance of Yerushalayim to us as central to our peoplehood. Shesham alu shvatim, that's where the tribes used to ascend. Now you have to remember, when you read Tanakh, Sefer Shoftim is like reading about the United States before the Civil War, right? It's like, it's all about take out the word states' rights and put in tribal rights, right? It was very hard to get the people to agree on anything because every tribe, when you asked them who you were, they didn't say, I'm an Israeli, I'm a Jew. The term Jew didn't exist until much, much later, the Second Temple. But they didn't say I'm a Ben Yisrael. They said I'm from Ruvain, right? Or I'm from, that's what they said. So, but Jerusalem united them. And that's why King David was such a genius in so many ways. That's why he moved the capital to a city that was in two tribes. Lahavdil, that was the same thing like Washington, D.C. It's the idea. It's in Maryland and Virginia, right? It's in the middle, and so this is Binyamin and Yehuda. This is Leah and Rachel, right? Because they're not just two different tribes, but they were from two different groupings. Quite often, the Ephraim, Binyamin, Rachel side was fighting with the Yehuda, etc. Leah side. So it's like it's the place that all the tribes could go, and they didn't for the time in Yerushalayim, they didn't describe themselves as from the tribe of Dan. For the time in Yerushalayim, there were Bnei Yisrael, there was Shivteka, Edut LeYisrael. When they're in Jerusalem, the behavior is testimony to the unity of Yisrael. And the more Kabbalistic amongst us say that in Yerushalayim, Shivtei Ka became one. And they all were miyuchas. They all were 100% Jewish. Because what does Yud K stand for? 15. Remember I said we'd get back to number 15? 15 stands for the 12 tribes and the 3 avot. The 12 tribes and 3 avot. Shivtei Ka. When we came to Yerushalayim, we all felt united. So that's the importance of Yerushalayim. Okay? Lahodot l'shem Hashem. And that is the greatest thanksgiving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the unity of the Jewish nation. So often we are at each other's throats, okay? Jews love a good fight, right? And we're always arguing. But what happens is we agree on Yerushalayim. So in Yerushalayim, the Shvatim all came to Yerushalayim and they stopped being individual fiefdoms. They became Shivtei Ka, and that's the greatest thanksgiving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki shama yashvu kisaot la mishpat, kisaot lebeit David. Because Yerushalayim represents all 3 branches of Jewish government, if you will. There is the Kohanim, of course, the Beit HaMikdash, so that's Avoda, right? And there are the courts where the Talmidei Chachamim sat, and Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, right? So that is Torah. And there also was Kisei HaMelech, the Melucha was there as well. the political. So we have the two religious arms of the country, which is the avoda and also the Torah, which Torah is also justice. And then the third branch of government was there too. It's the Kisei David. All three were in the same place, which, by the way, was not true in many countries. Historically, many countries had different places for different parts of government. I mean, in the world today, that's not as common. But even like in the Netherlands, it's true. You know, part of the government's in Amsterdam, and part of it's in The Hague. You know, and that was true historically. That the cultic site wasn't always the political site. But with us, they all come together, and of course, those are the three amudim of the world: Torah, avoda, and what? Why do we have a king? To take care of everybody. That's Gemilas Chesed. When you read Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu, you see the job of the king is to make sure that no one is abused. So it's Gemilas Chesed, you know. So that's what's going on. So all of that is in Yerushalayim. So Dalet and Hay is almost bookkeeping for the, you know, when you're looking at the poem. But then we get to Vav and Zion. Sha'alu shalom Yerushalayim, yishloyu ohavecha. I hope you like the letter Shin, okay? I mean, you've just got, you know, you've just got in that, you know, the tremendous amount of alliteration on the letter Shin. And Shin is just the sound of gas escaping. No, it's just the sound. It's just the sound of peacefulness. And the word in Hebrew for that peacefulness that Yerushalayim is supposed to represent is shalva. And that is in the pasuk as well, twice. Well, really, it's in the next pasuk, the second time. Okay, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim. You know, there are, when in the Hebrew language, I mean every language, there are harsh letters and soft letters. And Shin is one of the softest of the letters. One of the hardest of the letters is Kuf, Ka, right? And quite often, when I'm davening at the minyanim that aren't going to break speed records, when I'm at a more relaxing minyan, I just like to say the word, kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Because as we're trying to reach toward HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're going from the harshness of our reality to the shalva that we want to achieve in our relationship. And the word kadosh just builds that sense of going from a harsh reality to a shalva as we get closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And, when you get daven slowly, you can think about it. And this line just is pushing that shalva agenda. Seek, ask for. I hate to use the demand because it's such a soft sentence, okay? But we should be always looking for, praying for the peace of Yerushalayim. And what the name means peace. Shalom, Yerushalayim, okay? Yishalu ohevecha. And all of those who love it should have shalva. Before I just take your question, how do you translate the word shalva? And I'm not sure. I saw tranquil. I saw serene. I think I like sublime. Personally, I think my favorite translation for. Do you have translations in front of you? What do you have?
Serenity.
Serenity. At the end of 6. What are the words they use?
Well, here it's quite. The pasuk is translated, "Inquire."
Yeah.
After the peace of Jerusalem.
Okay.
Those who love you view the future unafraid.
Oh, unafraid. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shalva means you're not afraid, but he doesn't give us a word. I like sublime, but okay. But anyways, you can find it's this idea of tranquility, serenity, sublimity. It's like that's what it is. Best translation for shalva is Okay, when you have it. Okay, I'm sorry to make you wait. Please,
No, not at all. It's just an aside. There is
Please.
a phenomenal organization that I'm like, so, what's the word? Called Shalva, that comprises disabled, young adults. And
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
truly sublime.
right?
Because they had the strength, the wherewithal to back down out of the Eurovision because of.
Yeah. I mean, it was very. Their performance was very moving.
They rise above
Yeah.
disability. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I had to comment on the show.
And guys, go on YouTube. You can see their performance.
They're amazing.
Yeah,
It's
Shalva. Yes.
overriding.
See, is it? Besides the fact that Rivka has a granddaughter named Shalva, it was a really, really marvelous, little girl, which is a great name. But Shalva to me evokes the 80s and the early 90s. There used to be a breakfast cereal called Shalva. It was like the Israeli version of Sugar Smacks or Sugar Pops or something like that. One of those sugar cereals. And we refused to get the kids sugar cereals. Look, that was the Shabbos cereal with Shalva. And you look at the kids when they ate the Shalva. As they sat there in their sugar high, that was Shalva. So, I mean, the word it's a beautiful, beautiful word. And that it evokes so many nice things. And now it has a new connotation that just enhances the word. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. But it doesn't end. Yehi shalom b'chelech. There should be peace in your. Now the normal translation is ramparts. Okay, that chel is sometimes seen in biblical literature together with choma. And so, what is the chel to the choma is an argument. I translate it ramparts, which ramparts mean on the top of the wall. That's where the soldiers stand. There's a space for the fighters to shoot their arrows or whatever. Okay, that's called the ramparts. Some people say the chel is the glacis. The walls were quite often built with an outer slope to make it harder to scale the walls from the outside. And so some people say that's the chel, okay? But chel also means the soldiers, chayalim. And so it could be peace for your garrison, which I think is also a wonderful translation. But whether we're talking about the walls, we're talking about the soldiery, it doesn't make a difference. We're asking for the same thing. Let the soldiers of Yerushalayim be ceremonial, just there for show, that, sort of like the Lahavdil, sort of like the Swiss guards in the Vatican, Lahavdil, okay? But they did borrow a lot of things from us, so that they're there for pomp and pageantry. Let it be for that, okay? And you know what I think of when I think of this sometimes? It's wonderful that many times during the year, whether it's Hanukkah or it's other celebrations during the year, the city throws up pictures on the walls of the city. And I think about this. When that happens, they have permanent projectors, by the way, by the Mamila Mall, the top of the Mamila Mall, so they can keep and put periodically things on the walls. And these walls, which were built in the early 16th century, the walls we have today, by Suleiman the Magnificent, who thought of himself as a reincarnation of our Shlomo HaMelech, okay, the Havdil, he built the walls for protection. Right? But now they're not for protection, they're for show. They're for pageantry. And when you see the things projected against the walls, that's what it's talking about. The walls are there not for, war. They're there for peace. And they're there for, and one time we were walking by, and all that was being thrown up against the wall, projected onto the wall, was the words peace and shalom in many, many languages. I didn't know the other languages, whatever the other languages were. And I was like, wow, that's good. That's the walls here are for us to display peace, not to protect us from from bad guys. Okay.
This pasuk actually uses the word serenity for shalva.
Right, shalva ba'armonotayach, and there should be serenity in your mansions, in your homes, in your palaces. Yeah. So armon means a pretty ritzy house is an armon. Okay. I'm sorry?
No, it's palaces.
Palaces. Okay. So there should be in the within the city, around the walls and inside, everything should be serene, peaceful, sublime. And so that's what's going on. Okay. But just reading those verses, just read the verses to yourself. Vav and Zion. It's like, a hush comes over the world. Okay?
In Yiddish, you say shah.
Shah still. Yes. I didn't know many things that my grandmother said to me, I knew Shah. Yeah, a lot. But here we go. So I was always talkative. Here we go. So, Lema'an achai v're'ai. Now, first of all, this evokes Kalbach, right? That was one of his greatest hits. Lema'an achai v're'ai. It was just a wonderful, wonderful niggin, one of his best, okay? But it's the words. I mean, and Kalbach, Olav Shalom, would be the first one to say, he's only the vehicle for David HaMelech, okay? Leman achai v're'ai. What is achai v're'ai? And they're two nice terms. And one of my kids taught me to say to people, achi, to say to somebody that you want to be nice to, say achi. It's a beautiful thing. It's the Jewish version of bro. Lahavdil. So what do we mean by achai? What do we mean by re'ah? Now this is a big debate throughout history. Usually you see it gets translated as my brethren and my companions. Okay? That I think is the most popular translation. But these are specific technical terms. And to find out what these words mean, you have to go to chapter 19. Let's go to chapter 19 of Vayikra. Because there, the terms come up a lot. And like what it says, you don't charge interest, no rebate. It says, achecha. And you shouldn't hate achicha bilvavecha. Okay? You shouldn't hate your brethren in your heart. And you shouldn't charge your brethren interest. And then it says, however, you should love your reya like yourselves. What's the difference? Ach means fellow Jews, mishpacha, family. And the one who talks about this, I think the most movingly, is the Torah Tzimima, who we don't think of as a touchy-feely kind of guy. First of all, he was Lithuanian and okay, but anyways, we don't think of him as a touchy-feely kind of guy, and he wasn't. But when he talks about this, it's very moving, and he says he was a banker. I actually wrote about this in an article a couple of weeks ago. He was a banker by profession, and he worked at a bank in Warsaw. And he, by the way, he tried the rabbinate. He came to the United States. He was the first head of Ezrat Torah. That's the great charity on the Lower East Side. Reb Moshe was the head of it for many years. Moshe Feinstein, Olav Shalom. But he founded it, and that was what his job was. He was head of it. It didn't work out. He was only in America for 2 years, then he went back to Poland. And he died at the age of 81 at the beginning of the war. He was in a hospital that the Nazis burned down. He was there because of lung problems. He was terminal. but they burned down the hospital, and he was one of the patients that was not removed from the hospital. I mean, it's really terrible. The Torah Tamima, Rabbi Halevi Epstein. Okay? So, but he, writing about this, says, charging interest makes sense because a modern capitalist society can't exist without capital. I mean, you can't charge, exorbitant fees, but you need the free flow of capital for society to exist. So there's nothing wrong with charging interest, but you don't charge your brother interest. And every Jew is your brother and your sister. So you don't charge family interest. And we have to look at every Jew as family. And therefore, interest does not make sense. That's cruel. So that's achai. What's reya? And this is a big debate. According to the Meiri and the Torah Tamima, means everyone who rejects avodah zarah. Ethical monotheists. That's who reya is. Means all of those people who have accepted the precepts of Avraham Avinu, which is basically the Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach, but specifically a rejection of avodah zarah. So when we say L'ma'an achai v're'ai, for the benefit of my brethren and all ethical monotheists, that means Yerushalayim. It's a messianic. It's a geula vision of Yerushalayim, when the entire world will recognize the veracity of Torah and accept it, but not necessarily becoming Jewish. Okay, it seems to be a machlok between Yeshayahu and Zechariah on whether or not the Goyim will convert, but it seems they don't have to convert. They're reya. We show them love and respect, even without them becoming Jewish, as long as they are, as I said, ethical monotheists. L'ma'an achai v're'ai. Okay, adabra no shalom boch. Adabra no shalom boch. That's not so easy to translate. I will speak. So what's happened in the poem, in case you haven't noticed, it starts off in the past tense. Samachti, I was happy. I was happy when I thought about going to Yerushalayim. Then we're in the present tense. Omdu hayu ragleinu. They're standing there. Omdu, they're standing there. My feet are here. It's now. I'm in Yerushalayim. But now we're talking about a future. I can't stop talking about Yerushalayim and its place in my destiny and my nation's destiny and my world's destiny. Yerushalayim taburo shel olam, the navel, belly button, if you will, of the world. It's in the middle of the world, and it's the umbilical to spirituality, as we talked about before. Before I use the term, it's the interface, but I like the expression more. It's the umbilical to spirituality. It's not just that our prayers go up, but all the Kedusha flows out through it. Adabrana shalom bach. I am always, this is a future that includes the present. I am always talking about please, peace for you. And that's you means individuals and means Yerushalayim. Now it's at the end of a sentence, so you can't tell whether it's feminine or masculine, because it would be becha for a male or bach for a female. But when it's at the end of the sentence, when it's sof pasuk, you make even the becha would become bach, right? So you can't tell whether it's masculine or feminine, and that's perfect because it's both. It's perfect. Shalom bach. So it's Yerushalayim, which would be feminine. Cities are considered mothers, okay? But it's also you, all of my brethren, both male and female. But I love this tossing in there of the word nah. I actually, maybe I should have brought them. Maybe if I remember, I'll bring them. I made up these magnets that say, nah, please. And because, and I made them, I made them really for a dress I gave in short, but I used to give them out to the kids when I taught.
My grandchildren.
Blinetta, I will bring some. Okay, and they're blue and whites. They're very Israeli. So it's very nice. I forgot. I was getting my plan had been to get them. I wasn't on my game this morning, right? Because I get a little pain going. But anyways, nah is such a fabulous word because it reminds us all the time. Please. I want it, okay? But I want it in not in a vicious way, not in a grasping, rapacious way. Please, because it's for all of us. I happen to like the word please we use not in Hebrew, okay? But I like the word please in English because it both means nah, but it also means to be pleasing. It also means, pleasant has that connotation because it's nice. It's just nice. And I think that throwing the word nah in there doesn't just help with the cadence, it helps with the concept. We're begging for it. And, it's something that we really want. And we're demanding it in a very positive way. L'ma'an beit Hashem Elokeinu avaksha tov loch. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, avaksha tov loch, I am requesting, I'm bakasha, please, tov loch, good for you. So we go back and forth in the poem. Are we talking about the Jews or are we talking about Yerushalayim? Which are we doing? And of course, the answer is both. If I could read just a quote from Elchanan Salmon. I'm going to read a paragraph by him in just a second. The theme of the psalm is neither the city of Jerusalem in itself, nor the pilgrims who visit, but rather the encounter between them. The poem is not about the Jewish people. It's not about Yerushalayim. It's about the love affair between them. That's why the last two lines are so great. I'm praying for my brethren and my colleagues, and I'm praying for the Beit HaMikdash, and I'm praying for Yerushalayim because they're all together. I can't separate them. It's not like there's no either or at all. It's not possible. It just doesn't exist. It's because the greatness of the poem and the greatness of our relationship with Yerushalayim is the encounter, is the connection, is the unbreakable bond between us. As I'm running out of time, I want to read one paragraph from Rav Samit, who's a Rebbe at Yeshivat Har Etzion. Very nice fellow, very bright fellow. Well, when you say Yeshivat Har Etzion, you know he's bright, right? But he's also extremely edel. I mean, really. And he wrote this in his article on the Sun. I was still a youngster during the 6 Day War. On the third day of the war, he lived in Yerushalayim. On the third day of the war, which fell out on Wednesday, Chavchet Iyar, okay, the shelling of Yerushalayim abated, and we were able to leave our bomb shelter. And we went home. I think he lived in Givat Mordechai, if my memory is correct. Okay, during the afternoon, while listening to reports about the fighting, coming from the old massive radio in our house, I know it's hard for us to remember or believe, Israel did not have television in 1967. It wasn't here. They only had radio. Television came in 1970, 69 or 70, it was 70. Everybody had, I don't know if you remember. Do you remember riding on buses in the 80s and into the 90s, and people had had radios up to their ears every hour. And buses would quite often put the news on the hour. Beep, 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 Okay, but so everybody was glued during the war. Everybody glued to the radio. Coming from the old massive radio in our house, the program suddenly stopped. And in a tremulous voice, the broadcaster announced that the old city of Yerushalayim had been liberated. So I was in Boston then, but I remember hearing on the news that night, we watched Huntley Brinkley. I mean, whatever, I don't know, everybody had their own flavor. Some people I think people like Walter Cronkite. We watched Huntley Brinkley. I don't know why. But you heard on TV, Mata Gur, Oliver Shalom saying, Rabbi Biodenu. It was just amazing. Then they had to translate, but you heard, they played the recording. Okay.
Excuse me, but there's a photo of one of the soldiers entering Jerusalem after it became ours, and the way he looked, and it makes you cry.
All the time, yeah. And there were tremendous, films of that davening when they rushed to the Kotel. But, so what happened was, twice the broadcaster repeated the announcement, and silence fell upon our noisy home. Immediately following the announcement, the broadcast read Psalm 122. It's like that's how their response. Let's read, our parak of Tehillim. Our feet were standing within your gates, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem that is built. It is like a city that is united together. I was sure that the psalm had been specially written in the book of Tehillim for this exalted moment. The David HaMelech had that moment in time, Chavchet Iyar, in mind when he wrote the poem. And I was sure that the psalm had been specially written and prepared for this moment. I can't read. This was followed by the playing of Nomi Shemer's Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, which had first been heard only 2 weeks earlier on Yom HaAtzmaut. It was clear to me that the song was composed in anticipation of the liberation of Yerushalayim, in order to stir up our yearnings in our heart for the city that had been taken captive and swallowed up by the Arab legions. For 19 years, of course. But of course, what's amazing is, people always think, if you ask especially Americans, you say, oh, Yerushalayim, she wrote it because of the, no, it was the song at the competition for Eurovision. I don't know how many people remember what it used to be like. Eurovision's a big deal in Israel, but they used to, on Yom HaAtzmaut, have a contest in Binyanei Ha'umah for what song would represent. I don't know why in the 90s they stopped doing this. I remember in the 80s when I first got here, they were still doing it. And what happened was it would take a while for the judges to vote. And so they would play another song that for some reason wasn't eligible while they were waiting. And so in 67, the song that they played while the judges were judging was Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And it wasn't Naomi Shemer that sang it. I can't remember the name. It was a chayelet. It was a young girl. She became a famous, I can't remember now. I should have looked it up. And she sang it. She sang it, and she was still in the army. She was saying it in uniform. And those were dark days. May of 67 was a very, very pessimistic month. I mean, Nasser was really threatening the destruction of the Medina. And living in America, I hate to say, I was anticipating a second Holocaust. I mean, it really looked bleak. There was one rally in downtown Cairo that had 3 million people there. That was more people than lived in the Medina then. At one rally in downtown, I mean, it just looked, and then, when they asked the UN to leave and the UTAN, 2 weeks, they just packed up their stuffs and left, like, who cared? Let Israel fall, right? Yeah. But on Yom HaAtzmaut, they sang Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, and when she was done singing it, the room was silent. And the chayelet started walking off, and Naomi Shemer was on the side, and she started walking out to it to hug her, to soothe her disappointment. Yes, Shuli Natan. Thank you. Shuli Natan. Thank you. Okay? And so Naomi Shemer came out to hug her, to sympathize that it didn't click. But then the place exploded in applause, standing. Everybody said, sing it again, sing it again, sing it again. She sang it a second time, and they demanded a third singing. And by the third singing, everybody was singing it. And it's like the mood in the nation changed. I didn't know this. I only found out later. But it's like the mood in the nation changed. And we can give credit to Shuli Natan and to Naomi Shemer, of course. And I don't want to diminish their roles. But I think the thought of Yerushalayim. I think Yerushalayim was the catalyst. And Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu came through. And so did Tzahal. And I think it's an avla. I think it's kafoi tov to not do something special on Yom Yerushalayim. And Be'ezrat Hashem will have a wonderful Yom Yerushalayim this year. Yes. Nisim v'niflas b'yameinu. Okay, Shavua Tov.